Excuse me. Good evening. How's everyone doing this evening?
How are you?
Good.
I am good. It's been a pretty good day. A little bit cold around here though. Good. It looks like people are doing pretty well in the chat as well. That's great. Does anyone have any questions about anything? Anything you've been wondering about since last class or just now occurs to you? No? I'm going to assume that's a good thing if people don't have questions. If you do, of course, please make sure that you ask your questions, whether you ask it, turning on your microphone and asking or posting in the chat. And remember, in the chat, if you have a question that maybe doesn't pertain to the whole class, or if you're just a little shy about attaching your name to a question, you can always directly message me instead of messaging everyone, so that I can answer anything you have that you're uncertain of. Okay. So if you have not taken a look at the slides for tonight yet, we are going to be doing a workshop on your resumes, and we are going to be spending the rest of class talking about cover letters. So I honestly did not remember to look when I was posting the link to the slides, which really I think was maybe just a little over an hour ago. I had to go out this afternoon, which I usually don't have to on Mondays, but I did have to today. And so everything was like a little bit behind schedule for me. And so I was in a hurry to get something else done, and I did not look to see that everyone submitted a resume draft. If you haven't done that, those were supposed to be submitted by noon today. So please make sure you get that submitted, or at least have it available to use in our workshops. I will be putting comments on them. I'll be doing some of that during your workshops today, and then I'll finish up whatever I don't get to tomorrow, so that you can have some time to read my comments and take that into consideration when you do your revisions. So again, since we've had a couple of people join since I last asked, does anyone have any questions or concerns about the resumes, about anything that we've been doing, anything we might do? I do want to take a moment to remind you, because we do have some warnings for inclement weather coming up this week. If the college is closed, if the main campus is closed, all of the classes are canceled for that, which won't affect our class because obviously we're here right now. But if you have other classes, if they meet, virtually, or if they're hybrid classes and you're supposed to have a virtual meeting, and just know that you are not supposed to have class if the rest of campus is closed. So you might want to check with professors if they haven't given you any instruction on what to expect in case of campus closure. I was thinking that I told you all of this, and then I never told you what would happen if one of our classes is canceled because of weather. And what will happen is I will go ahead and just make a recording of the pertinent parts of whatever slides I've prepared for that class, and for you to watch on your own time. But all work submissions will be delayed sufficiently so that you have a chance to talk to me directly about them. We can go over any questions or concerns you have before you have to turn them in. Okay. And I don't see any more questions coming through or anything. Oh, wait, somebody does have a question. All right. I'm waiting for it. My eyes are glued to the chat to see if it's going to come through. Let's see. Okay, yeah, and this might affect some other people as well. So the question has to do with the job posting requiring a portfolio. And it just says, I just put a link to my website. Is that okay? Yes, that is. If your website is serving as a portfolio of your work or in the place of a portfolio of your work, then yes, you put a link to your website. Let's see. There was a safety advisory that everyone received from your student emails. Okay, I think you're referring to the one that was sent out. I think it was sent out today, about the injured person outside the library. Yeah, okay, yeah, campus police was called to, or people from campus, I think campus police were called to help deal with that since it occurred, or whatever. The person was found on campus property, but it actually, I think, was not someone from GRCC. It was not a current GRCC student or employee, as far as I know. So it actually turned out not to be a GRCC related event, other than whatever it was happened maybe on GRCC property. But that it's a reminder to be aware of your surroundings. So if you're on campus, if you're downtown, be aware of your surroundings, especially if you're there at night or at a time when there are not a lot of people around. You can always, if you're on campus, especially at night, you can always ask for an escort from campus security. They will come and walk you to your vehicle or to wherever you're going, you know, right around campus. They're not going to walk you all the way downtown or something, but they'll help you get where you need to go safely. And I've taken advantage of that before, teaching night classes sometimes. So, oh yeah, and that's right, Maddie. If anyone knows anything about the incident, if you happen to know something about the incident, please share that with GRPD, the Grand Rapids Police Department, or if you want to, you could probably share it with the GRCC campus security as well. I forgot about that part of the email. So yeah, you know, sometimes things happen. So just be aware, and if you know something, tell the appropriate authorities. Anything else that we need to cover about that kind of stuff? Sometimes I forget details unless I write them down. Okay. Right, if something else pops up in the chat, I'll try to make sure I cover that. Okay, so we are going to be talking about cover letters today, but before that, we are going to work with our resumes. I'm going to turn off my camera and share the screen now. And so we can all kind of see what's going on here. Today we have the resume workshop. We're going to talk about preparing to write your cover letter. We'll talk about what goes into the cover letter draft, and we'll go over the assignments. We may finish early tonight, which I'm hoping will be the case since I kept you later than I had intended last week. Right, before we look at the workshop guide, we did have the question about preferred pronouns last week, and I told you all I would do some checking on that. And the people that I talked to, they usually do serve on hiring committees, some at GRCC and a couple at other places. And what they're saying is that preferred pronouns are not yet common or expected on resumes and cover letters. You do have to be careful because, you know, while we do have, you know, policies, laws about not discriminating against people on the basis of things such as sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, and other, you know, ideological things, disabilities and all of that kind of stuff, you know, you're not supposed to be discriminated against. It does happen. And a lot of times employers will get around it by saying that they had some other issue, but it really does come back to whatever it is they see. So things like age and all of that. So the best advice that I've been given is to save any, like in this case, the preferred pronouns discussion to an interview, or even possibly after you're hired. It may not come up in an interview situation depending on how the interview is conducted, but it might, you know, it might be best to just wait unless you know for sure that the organization is, you know, has no problem with it, has no worries about that, doesn't, you know, that it's an accepted thing in that culture. and that organization's culture. We just live in a world where ideas are changing and we have lots of different views. We do have, protections under the First Amendment that we're supposed to have, but those can sometimes work against people as well as for them. I'm sure you're all aware of that. So, my advice is just to be cautious and, you don't have to hide things about yourself, but maybe know when to share those things when it's most appropriate. Does anyone have any questions or comments or concerns about that? Okay. All right, I'm seeing some no questions, responses in the chat, and I'm not hearing anything from anyone else. So I'm going to assume that we're all good with that. We all understand what the advice is, the situation. And yeah, you're welcome. It was a good question that was brought up. And so I am glad it was asked so that I could look into it. In our ideal world, we would not have to worry about pronouns at all, or it wouldn't be a problem to share them without repercussions. But we live in a world where that's not always going to happen. So anyway, if you do have questions, you do have concerns, and they come to you later, or you're not quite sure you want to share them with the whole class, feel free to message me privately. Or talk to me after class. I am always open to having conversations and helping people work through things. It often helps me work through, things as well. So, don't be afraid to bring up things that might be a little difficult. We can work through them together. We may not solve the world's problems, but we can sure try. And if not, we can look at pictures of cats. All right. So for our resume workshop, we're going to look together quickly at the guide. And then I will open up some rooms and have you share with one another. So the workshop guide is just, I give you the criteria, and this is the same criteria that's on the assignment sheet, which I realized I did not link in. I didn't link one in last week's slides because I wrote out what I wanted you to do in last week's slides. So I created the document. I linked it in this week's slides in the assignment section. So we'll look at that later, but this is the same information that is on that. So you'll have consistent information. So what we're looking at is the different parts of the resume. You may or may not be looking at all of these things on one person's resume, but the things that are required, of course, are the name and contact information, a summary statement, objective or headline, your education and relevant experience. And then the optional things are things like skills, professional development, awards and accomplishments, and volunteer experience. And then a reminder of what you should not have on your resume. And then just some notes about the design elements, the style, and then asking you to give 2 or 3 specific suggestions for revision. So what I would have you do is, and I'm hoping that most of you have participated in workshops in some other classes, whether they're English classes or other kinds of classes, but just take each person's resume one at a time, discuss it together. That person can take notes. You don't have to write up anything for the person, just look at, use the share screen. I'm going to make sure that everyone can share screen. I have to set that option, but I'll do that momentarily. You'll all be able to share screen with each other. You should be able to. share your resumes, talk about them with each other, what's working well. You as the writer, when it's your turn to share your resume, if you have specific questions, if you want some specific advice from your group, speak up and ask those questions. Tell them what you need. And then your group members should be willing to look at what you've got and give the advice that they have. Remember, when we do workshops in any setting, advice is just that, it's advice. And as the receiver of advice, you get to decide what you do with that advice. You can take it and implement it if you think it's good advice, if you understand it and you think it's going to enhance what you've already got. Or you can say thank you and discard anything that you don't think is going to work. You don't have to do something just because someone advises you to do it. Not in these kinds of workshops. So just keep that in mind. These workshops are meant to help you get other eyes on your product, and see how it's being received by other readers, and that they can help you improve it and make it better, make it the best product that you can put together. Do we have any questions or concerns about this before I open up some breakout rooms? Beth, if you're here, you usually put the links in the chat for us. If you could do that, or if anyone else wants to, just to make it easier for people to get the link to the workshop guide, that would be fantastic. I am going to stop sharing and get the breakout rooms set up. And in the meantime, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to share. Oh, I don't see Beth. Okay, thanks, Nelson. Okay. So first, I'm going to make sure you guys all have the ability to share, or the permission anyway. And then let's see, we've got 20 people today. I'm going to set up 6 rooms. Okay. Okay. I am about to open all the rooms. If you do have any questions or concerns, let me know. When your group is done, go ahead and return back to the main room so that I know that you're done. If you have questions while you're working, feel free to pop back in and ask those questions to me. I will just be going through the resumes you submitted on Blackboard and making comments on those there. And the rooms are open, so you can join them whenever you're ready. Make sure you have your resume ready to share. resumes that you were wondering about. I see that we have one comment here about it being really great and helpful. Another one, very fruitful, a good base where to fix and see other people's resumes, gave you more reference to model yours. Yes, that's part of my goal in having you look at each other's resumes, is to see what other people are doing and maybe get some ideas for your own. But were there any questions that came up or concerns that came up as you were looking
I
at?
have one.
Yeah.
So with mine, I've had jobs like in between that don't necessarily like relate to the marketing or graphic design that I'm kind of like going towards.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, is it better to leave gaps and have them ask about that, or to include it and just kind of include it out of order and maybe have it at the bottom to since it's less relevant?
So what you might want to consider doing is we talked about kind of that combination format where you have like the focus on the different kinds of positions. Like that functional format where you're looking at the functions. So the jobs that you are comfortable including because they are relevant to the job you're applying for would be like one section, and you could give that a heading that covers like all those kinds of jobs. And then the other ones, you could just put as like other work experience or something like that, and have it under that second heading.
Okay.
Does that make
I
sense? Kind of
It
like
makes sense, but mine's already 2 pages, so I'm worried that that extra header will make it too long.
that is a concern. And in that case, if if you are looking at like it's going to be too long, then the other thing you could do is leave those things out. Unless there is some sort of a huge gap. If you have a huge gap somewhere, you might want to include something that maybe doesn't work just to show you had work experience during that time. Or remember, that's also something to talk about in an interview.
Okay, perfect.
You
Thank you.
know, so yeah, I would, it's a, and when I look, I haven't looked at yours yet on Blackboard. So when I do look at it, I'll have a more specific answer to give you. Like right now, it's just very general, but you can have gaps if in like your case where you're talking about jobs that really aren't relevant to what you've done or what you're applying for, I mean. You just have to be ready to explain that when they ask, well, what did you do in 2018? If you weren't working or going to school. Let's see. I got a comment about maybe adding a picture to mine to take up some space. That is really up to you if you want to add a picture. I'm going to say the same thing that I said though about the preferred pronouns, is that you have to be careful in when you include photos. Again, you're not supposed to be discriminated against on all of the different things that we've talked about and many more, but sometimes you will be. And that's just the nature, unfortunately, of our society that we live in. But I think it's becoming more and more common, and in some countries it's required. So it's not a bad idea, I don't think. But if you have a reason to maybe be concerned, if you're like as a female going into a male dominated space, it may be better to leave your picture off. If you have, some other factor that's visible in your photo that you don't want to be taken into consideration, it might be best to leave your photo off of the resume and let them judge you solely on what's on the paper before they meet you in person. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, that's just my advice based on my own experiences and the people I've been talking to recently who are dealing with resumes and applications on a regular basis. Um, just be smart about what you choose. So, yeah. There may be other ways you can get something into your resume that's a little more visual if that's appropriate. Okay. Any other questions or concerns that came up when you're looking at the resumes?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What about career change? So I feel like my resume, for example, it screams accounting, but I
Okay.
wanted to try something else. But I only have accounting background. So how would you like change that in your resume if you want to apply for something different?
Mm. I think it's something that you have to look at. What is the change that you're trying to make? So what is this new position that you're interested in? And then how can you leverage the responsibilities, accomplishments, skills that you developed through your accounting experience into that new position? And maybe focusing on, instead of your work history, which you still have to have on the resume, but maybe it's not the first thing they see. Maybe what they see first is your education and your skill development, and any professional development that can show how those skills would transfer over to a new career, and then have your work experience sort of lower on the resume.
Oh, okay.
And then your cover letter is a really good place to then start trying to explain your interest in changing your career.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions or concerns that anyone wants to ask or share? These are some good ones that you've brought up, and the resumes that I've looked at so far have been really good. I'm putting on my nitpicky teacher hat right now to remind you to pay attention to things like making sure you're using active verbs, make sure you are consistent with your layout, with your formatting, right down to the way you format dates. Don't forget to include the relevant dates. If you're including dates for one job, you should include them for the rest of the jobs. You don't have to be as specific as the month and the year if that's not appropriate for you. You can just give years. And then for those of you who are still pursuing your degrees, you haven't earned them yet, you should put, and we didn't talk about this last time, but you should put like expected. So if you put BA, BA Business Administration, and then after that in parentheses, expected 2022, or something like that, if you haven't earned it yet. That would be something that your prospective employer would want to know, is that you're graduating, you're supposed to graduate in April, or you're going to finish up over the summer, so you'll be done in August, or whatever it is, whatever that time is. Just put that expected whenever you're going to complete it. Especially if you are applying for more of an internship rather than an actual job position. Like if you were doing that in your real life, you would definitely want to include that. And I think that was those were all of the more general comments. I do want to say that when you do go on Blackboard to check your comments, make sure you open up the document, because I've been using the commenting feature, the inline commenting feature. And if you have trouble with that, let me know and I can show you how to access that and make it work so you can read the actual comments. Right. If there aren't any more questions or comments about the resumes, then we can move on to the cover letter discussion. Okay. So a cover letter, many of you have written them before. In fact, one of you got carried away and submitted one with your resume. Pretty cool. Others of you may have done that too, and I just haven't gotten to them yet. But so the cover letter is what your prospective employer is going to see first. And it does exactly what it sounds like it does. It covers, it's the cover to the resume. It comes before the resume. The cover letter is really important for a few different reasons. One of them, it is your first written communication, formal written communication in most cases with this prospective employer. And so it can give the employer a sense of your ability to communicate in writing, to communicate with strangers in most cases, to share the important things about yourself that are relevant to that position in a way that is both, I guess, both proud and humble, if you want to think of it that way, where you're not coming across as arrogant or a know-it-all, but you are strong in what you see as how you fit into this company, that you can present yourself well. So the essence of the cover letter, though, you have to match the employer's needs and highlight your own candidates. And you need to do that through the emphasis, the tone, and the style of your cover letter. You also have to connect with your resume in the cover letter, and it should also match in tone and style and design. So in a lot of cases, if you were to use templates, you would want to use matching templates. So your resume template would have a matching cover letter template. They may not be exactly the same, but they would go together very well. They complement each other well. And we're going to look at a little bit of that. And you've had some examples in the handbook. So if you haven't read the handbook section yet, you should definitely go through that. It will help you a lot, both the resume section and the application letter section, which is what they call the cover letter section. So make sure you're looking at those. And I've taken most of this from the writer's checklist on page 35 in the handbook, but this is just to give us this big picture of what we should be thinking about as we're preparing to write. So in your cover letter, you need to provide context by referring to the job ad or mentioning how you learned about a possible opening. You need to match the tone of the letter to the language of the job post. So I've been asking you to analyze job posts. You should be familiar with how they're designed. You've got one that you've been working with for your resume, and you're going to be looking at it again in writing your cover letter. You want to show how the job is appropriate for you, and of course, how you're appropriate for the job, using vocabulary from the job post, not copying everything verbatim, but using some of the keywords, the key language, and then showing how you meet or exceed the employer's minimum requirements. Notice that showing, not just telling them that you meet or exceed their requirements, but showing them how you do that with some specific examples. And then if appropriate, describe how you're upgrading your skills in any areas in which you fall short. And as we were just talking a few minutes ago, this is a good place in the cover letter to talk about a career change, why you want a career change, and how the skills that you have developed in your current career can transfer over to your new career and meet or exceed the employer's expectations. Right. So we have in the handbook on pages 33, 34, and 465, we have a job post, a cover letter, and a resume, all go together. And if you have your handbooks handy, I would like to have a discussion about them to see how they all work together. And you can see that on page 33, at the bottom of the page is this job post. And if you're looking in your book, obviously you'll get a much better view of it than the photo that I added in to the slides. But you can see that some of these keywords have been highlighted. Like junior graphic designer, digital and print content for exhibits, collaborative approach, video experience, and then the degree requirements and the experience requirements, and then the online portfolio. Those pieces of information have been highlighted because they're some of the most important information for understanding that job post. And then if you read the cover letter and the annotations to the cover letter on page 35, wait, do I have the right? No. Page 34, sorry. Page 34, you will see how this writer has taken to heart, I guess, that information from the job post and presented himself as an ideal candidate. So this job posting is for a natural history museum, for a junior graphic designer at a natural history museum. How does the writer, if you can skim through that letter quickly on page 34, how does the writer, I guess, present himself as an ideal candidate for that job? Where are some specific places that he presents himself?
Well, I guess on the cover letter, he talks about working on a team to upgrade the CGI logo for Paramount Pictures. I know Paramount's a pretty big company, and that kind of shows that he is capable of the job.
Good. So yeah, leveraging Paramount Pictures, which is, it's a big deal company. Yeah. So leveraging that experience. Good. What other places does he present himself as an ideal candidate? Or what other ways? Anyone have any ideas?
In the job ad, it says they're looking for someone with some video experience, and then where is it? It says he worked with leading motion picture, television, and music companies. So he said that helped relate to the museum visitors and patrons,
Okay,
help make the pictures more attractive, I guess.
yeah. And he's got museum experience, and this is for a natural history museum. So not only does he have that large company experience with Paramount, but he has museum experience with a public museum. And he
Eh.
mentions that. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
It also mentions executing a wide range of projects.
Mhm.
And he does mention in that second paragraph that he was responsible for the development of like brochures, newsletters, posters. So it shows like that he's got different abilities in producing other projects. And then he also mentions how he was able to be a project manager, which I think taking on projects shows that he's capable of taking on projects
Excellent.
and managing them.
Yes, great. Yeah. So he, in his cover letter, demonstrates that he understands what this company is looking for, what this natural history museum is looking for. And even though he is, I believe, yeah, it says a graduate applying for a graphic design job. So he's a fairly recent college graduate. He's got the experience. He's been able to gain not just the book knowledge, but the actual experience that could make him the ideal candidate for this position. And if we look at his resume on page 465, we can get a sense of his design skills as well as the experience that he has. So how do we see his resume reinforcing everything that's in the cover letter and then expanding upon it with more details? How do we see that play out here?
He's creative in it, I guess. And you kind of see that he puts like that JG up there, which is a little bit more creative than most standard resumes. And then also blocks it off and makes it a little bit unique from like standard like template resumes. Doing graphic design now, I probably wouldn't think it's that interesting, but I don't know I don't see when the book is saying like this example is from like because I mean, like if you look at the email too with his cover letter, that's a pretty dated email. So maybe like
Yeah.
early 2000s. So I mean, at that point, like, yeah, that would be really good. But like right now, I think the creative abilities of graphic designers have kind of advanced, but you can see that he put that effort in there to be creative rather than just a standard template.
Yes. I agree with all of your comments there. It does show that like his degree apparently was in 2018, so it's only, you know, like 4 years ago, but
Well, different designers, different
yeah.
outtakes, I guess, you know.
You know, and for a recent graduate who may not have access to some of the software, you know, on his own computer or something, maybe this was,
Definitely, because the programs are really expensive, so fair.
yeah, I mean, we don't know for sure, but no, your point is good though, that if you, it shows that he has the creativity. It shows that he also understands the needs for a reader to be able to easily identify information and find what they want to focus on. But it is kind of basic in its design skills. Or design elements in that. So other comments about this resume and how it shows this candidate's suitability for this job. Or is there anything you look at that you think maybe isn't done as well as you would like? Nobody has any more comments about it? Okay. Yeah. If we really get into it and look at it, we can see some of like the keywords that he's used carry over from the job post to the cover letter to the resume, which is what you want to see. You want to see that consistency. All right. So when we're preparing to write, we should keep in mind that the cover letter should never be treated as an afterthought. Unfortunately, a lot of people do treat the cover letter as an afterthought. I treat it as a chore, but I like writing the cover letters far more than I like designing a resume. But it should really be seen as an opportunity to make yourself stand out, to make yourself known and memorable as an ideal candidate, as someone that they want to pursue. So read that job post carefully, know what the employer is looking for and how you're expected to apply. Then as you're preparing to write, ask yourself these questions. What personal qualities are you unable to include in your application that would make you more memorable? Again, this is a good place for that, thinking about why you want a career change and how you can leverage your current career into a new career. Do you have any connection to the reader or organization worth mentioning? What are the key qualifications the company is seeking and how do you best match them? How can your cover letter embody the qualities the organization seeks? Why do you want this opportunity? And what can you say that is genuine and positive about the position or organization? So really thinking through those questions and getting kind of your mind in the right space to present your information the best you can. Any questions about that? Okay, if we don't have any questions about that and we don't have any comments about that, we're going to talk about drafting the cover letter. Okay. The cover letter, just like any letter, has three main parts. It has an opening, it has a body, and it has a closing. So we practiced this in those introductory emails back in the first week, where you had an opening and you had a body and you had a closing. And it was a professional email and you were introducing yourself. You're doing all of those same things here in your cover letter, but you're doing it in a very specific way. And for a different purpose. Your purpose with the emails were to introduce yourselves to me, and to kind of establish our working relationship for the semester. Your purpose in your cover letter is to advance in this job process, so in this hiring process. So you want to keep that in mind, and you want to then focus on the things that are going to make you stand out and get you that job. So your opening is to get your readers' attention and compel them to keep reading, just like you had to do in your English 101, English composition classes, writing your essays, except in your letter, this is a short part of the letter, and is more focused and more formal than your essays would have been. So the first thing you want to do is use an appropriate greeting addressing a specific human being if possible. So if you can somehow, if it's not given in the information, if you can somehow find out who the hiring manager is or the human resources contact who's going to be looking at your resume, some person, and knowing their title, being able to address them appropriately. Make sure that you're using a greeting. You don't just want to start in with consider me for your job, but dear so-and-so. You want to be able to put that in there. You want to get to the point as quickly as possible. So you don't need to have any kind of introductory material to your introduction. You just want to get right in there. And in that sample that we had and the other samples, everyone, in all of them, the writer just gets straight to the point. We've got in the one we were just looking at, a graphic designer at Dyer Con, Jody Hamill, informed me that you are recruiting for a junior graphic designer in your marketing department, having participated in substantial volunteer activities at a local public museum. I would fit well in this position. So we've got 2 sentences that establish the connection and how this person believes he is right for that position. So you just want to get straight to that point, providing the context and showing enthusiasm for the position and for working with the organization. So nothing fancy, just straight to the point. And then in your body can be, 1 main paragraph, 2 paragraphs, but you don't want to go too much longer than that. As far as the main body paragraphs go. If you see the one we were just looking at, we have 2 main body paragraphs and then the closing paragraph. The one on the page next to it on page 35 actually has 1 main body paragraph, and it's a little bit longer. And then the next one on page 36, again, is back to 2 body paragraphs. So you don't really want to have more than those 2 body paragraphs though, because again, you are trying to fit your cover letter on 1 page. If it goes to the second page, it probably won't be read past the first page anyway. So you want to focus on the specific information and present it as kind of efficiently as possible. So you want to show how you are qualified for the position and what value you bring to the organization, just like your resume. You wanted to show those 2 things in your resume, you are going to show those 2 things in your cover letter, and you're going to do it by giving sort of a snapshot of specific examples. What do you most want readers to notice in your resume? What will make you more real to the readers, more noticeable? What are your best matching points with the position? What specific examples demonstrate your qualifications for the position? And what noticeable achievements show your value to the employer? You can refer to your resume, but you don't want to just simply repeat what is on the resume. especially not word for word. So you want to give specific examples, and we see that with the student example here. For example, I helped upgrade the CGI logo for Paramount Pictures. And then as far as like that sort of achievement, he goes on to say, and the director of marketing commended my work, right? So he's got kind of both things there. He has that specific example of his work and the value it brought to that organization. And so the reader can see, well, hey, I can expect this kind of work from this person if he comes to our organization. Any questions about the body or the opening? Not yet, okay. All right. And then once you've given your reader a reason to remember you and to think that you are right for the job, you want to have a closing paragraph. This closing should be formal, positive, and convey warmth. You want to be bold. You want to ask for an interview. So if we look at the example of the one we were looking at with the graphic design position, the closing says, could we schedule a meeting at your convenience? And then the one on the next page says, I look forward to an interview with you at your convenience. The last one after that says, I would be happy to discuss my qualifications in an interview at your convenience. So in each one, the writer expects an interview. We have to be confident enough to ask for that interview. So you want to, whether you're comfortable enough to say, can we schedule an interview, or you would prefer to say, I look forward to talking with you more in an interview. Either one, you need to have that in your cover letter. You need to provide the contact information that should be used in scheduling the interview. Yes, I know that that information is on your resume, and I know that if you have a formal letter with a formal header, you're going to have that information there, but you want to make it easy for the person who's reading your letter to say, please email me at, or call me any weekday morning at, and give your phone number. The more you can give them to help them contact you, the more likely they will. So providing your contact information and then ending with a thank you and a positive statement of goodwill. Again, our graphic design guy, thank you for your consideration. The next one is also thank you for your consideration. And the last one just says, I look forward to speaking with you. It doesn't offer a thank you. I would encourage this person to go back and revise their letter to offer a thank you. My standard is thank you for your time and consideration. That's just my standard, but some sort of statement of goodwill and a thank you. And then you always want to close appropriately. Sincerely is the standard kind of closing statement. Sincerely with a comma after it, and then underneath that, your full name. If you can do like the fancy signature, you could do that. If you're sending this as a hard copy, you should always print it and then actually sign it underneath your printed name or above your printed name, however you want to. It's usually above your printed name. It's been so long since I've done that. Everything's been electronic. Yeah, and then if you look at the graphic design sample, underneath his name, he has a link to his portfolio, his website. So if you have a portfolio or a website, you would want to include your link there. If you have like an electronic web-based version. And then other ones have their contact information or enclosure, resume. You have different ways you can do that kind of at the end. There isn't necessarily one way to do that, but if you have a portfolio, I would definitely link it there. Unless you've already linked it within the text, which is, a possibility depending on how you craft your letter. So those are the basics of writing the cover letter, what should be in the cover letter and how you should go about thinking about like how to write it. So what questions and comments, concerns do you have about writing a cover letter? Does everyone feel fairly confident in writing your cover letter? Yeah, there's a message that was sent to me that it seems pretty straightforward. It is, if you just break it down into easy steps. Got some great ideas from the book I plan on using. Yes, that's great. The book is really a great resource for things like this. I was, to be honest, so this was assigned to me, this textbook was assigned to me. And when I first looked at it, I was like, this isn't very usable. It's not very user friendly. But then the more time I spent with it, the more I realized it actually is user friendly if you just understand how it's set up. But it has a lot of great information and good examples that you can really use as models, and then just kind of fill in your own information. Any other comments or questions about your cover letter? The final thing that I want to say is that you should proofread excessively. I don't remember if it's, yeah, it is. It's in the handbook. It says proofread carefully. There was somewhere else, I don't know if it was this book or if it was a different book I was looking at to get like a different perspective on teaching this material. Somewhere though, it said to proofread 10 times, which I think is a lot, but is actually good advice. So leave yourself enough time to proofread and to proofread again and to proofread again, and have somebody else look at your letter. Ask someone you trust who's good at proofreading to look at your letter. And if you don't know anyone in real life who is good at that, we have the Language Arts Lab and you can take it in. You don't even have to go on campus. There are instructions in the syllabus on how to access the Language Arts Lab online. So you just go in there and meet with a tutor and have the tutor help you go through it and pick out the things that need to be revised, and then go ahead and revise and edit carefully. When you're going for a job, you want your letter to be as perfect as it possibly can be. You do not want to be dismissed because you had some obvious grammar mistakes that made it just clear that you're not as careful about those things. So really make sure that you proofread, revise, and edit carefully. So the assignment is to use the job post you chose and the resume you created, write a cover letter introducing yourself and your desire, suitability, and value for that position. And then you have the purpose is to introduce yourself to a prospective employer. Your audience is the hiring manager and the hiring committee, and your content is relevant information about yourself and your qualifications for the position. You need to have the greeting, the opening, the body, and the closing. And I just realized I want to make sure that nobody forgets your signature. That, you know, can just be the typed out full name, like first and last name. Or if you're able to do a digital signature, you can do that as well. But that part's not required, the digital signature, like actually signing. And then your content, you need to be clear about what position you're applying for, how you learned about the position, if that's relevant, any connection you have, if that's relevant as well. Specific examples demonstrating your qualifications for the position. Remember, you're showing, not telling, but showing. Same thing with notable achievements. Connection to the resume by using language or using items from the resume. Requesting that interview. Providing your contact information, your thank you and note of goodwill at the end, the formal closing with the full name in your signature. So I have that there, but just to make sure that you see that as a part of the letter. And then your style, professional, formal, yet still conveying warmth, respectful, emits positive energy, conversational and friendly. This part is taken directly from the email, the professional email assignment. The 300 word, I'm going to change here to 500 word maximum because I think that a cover letter could go a little bit longer than 300 words, but still you want to, or one page, whichever you hit first. You want shorter paragraphs, 1 to 3 sentences, but I'm going to change that 3 to 5 sentences. But then stick to the 10 to 15 words each sentence. Present factual information. Be clear in your words and your word choices. Avoid slang and cliches. You're going to submit your draft by Monday, and then your revised cover letter will be due on next week, Thursday. Any questions, comments, or concerns about this assignment? What's expected? Anything else that you would like to see on this assignment sheet to help you understand the assignment or remember the requirements? Okay. If you do, of course, remember, you can always come back and ask your questions. So your assignments that are due over the next several days, we have your revised resume. I would like to see those by noon on Thursday, this week, Thursday. So you've gotten lots of suggestions in your workshops. If anyone needs to go back into the workshop, into the breakout room and talk to your group members, let me know in the chat or just pop up and say so, and I'll reopen those rooms so anyone who needs to, any group that needs to, can go back in there. Your cover letter draft is due Monday. And then I have some readings here that you should be working on over the next week or so. We are going to next week be doing a workshop on the cover letter drafts, and then we are going to start our unit on writing in the workplace. So we're going to move on from trying to get a job to actually having the job and doing the kind of writing that we need to do in that job. So I had asked you all earlier in the semester in those introductory emails to let me know if there were specific kinds of workplace writing that you wanted to work on. Some of you had some things you wanted to do. Some of those were resumes and cover letters. So we've kind of checked those off almost. There were some other specific workplace writing, technical writing kind of assignments that are projects that people wanted to make sure that they could do. If you've thought of something recently, or you think of something in the next week, let me know what that is so that I can work it into our schedule and make sure that we are covering that material that is most relevant and useful for you. And because it's always good to have some inspiration, and Langston Hughes is one of my absolute favorites. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. So if you've got dream jobs, if you've got a dream career that you're working for, keep going, keep working for it. You'll get there. All right. If you have any questions or concerns, please stick around and ask. Otherwise, that is class for today. And you are free to log out. If you need to go back, if a group needs to go back into the breakout rooms, let me know so I can open that up for you. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm here. Otherwise, have a great evening and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
I actually had a question on my resume.
Sure.
So I think I completely did it wrong. I was under the impression we had to make ourselves appear to be the ideal candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And my career, it's not really possible to be the ideal candidate right now because you have
Okay.
to have a bachelor's degree and a CPA license.
Okay. So did you kind of project yourself into the future?
Yeah,
And
I
give
said I
yourself-
graduated like 2017 and
Okay. You know, I think that's fine for right now. What we're trying to do really is to make sure that you can create a resume, that you can present yourself in the best light for that position. So if you've accomplished that, even though you've kind of changed your chronology a bit, I'm not going to worry about that.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and then should I just stick with that and then use
Yeah.
that in my cover letter then?
Yeah, just stick with that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. All right. All right, Grace, I know you and I are gonna look at your Blackboard. Let's see. I see Austin and Sharon. Do either of you have questions or concerns at this point that you would like to bring up?
No, other than a rough start to the semester, I do have to take care of these things. I do plan on doing that. I can do that
Okay.
tonight.
Yeah, I did see your email. I just realized during class that I forgot to reply back to it. I wasn't able to when I saw it. And I honestly just forgot to reply back and let you know that I got your email, that I understand the situation. And if there's anything I can do, anything you need assistance with, please let me know.
All right, sounds good. I'll probably take care of all of that tonight and then send you an email.
Okay.
Well, a lot of emails, but
Sounds good.
Yep.
All right.
all right.
All right. Take care, Austin.
Yep, you too.
Thanks. And Sharon, is there anything that you would like to discuss? Are you still with us? No? Okay. Then I'm going to. I'm just going to do that. I think. Okay. All right, Grace, let me stop the